Mangione's lawyer brought up the fact that Mayor Adams has been publicly discussing undisclosed evidence. This, I think, is a direct tie-in to the fact that basically anyone who's in the power structure wants absolutely no part whatsoever of this story becoming a big deal. They want to try to put Mangione away as quickly as possible. So when you make a deal with the devil, as Mayor Adams did with the Trump DOJ, to basically have a get out of jail free card and facilitate what they want in terms of maneuvering with ICE and, doing the deportations out of New York. Who's to suggest that there wasn't some ancillary additional components that were added in, such as we want to get this Mangione character the hell out of the news cycle as fast as possible. So what would you say is sort of the motivation here pertaining to whether it is Mayor Adams saying anything? And what would you say was the overall message that you took away from Mangione's day in court that took place on Friday?
Yeah, I think that, there's a whole genre in terms of TV. I mean, Nancy Grace and a whole lot of, attorneys, their careers were made off of OJ and this like made for TV crime stuff. And I feel like you're starting to see that with the Mangione case. You had a Discovery Channel documentary about it, then an HBO documentary about it. And I think the reason for that is the police and the government officials who want to elevate this case to terrorism need to make him a terrorist in the public eye. And I think that's why you saw Eric Adams, who, joined the SEAL Team 6 level buffoon of cops around Mangione on the perp walk when he was transported from Pennsylvania to New York. Then Eric Adams and one of the top NYPD detectives had to be in a documentary basically saying he's guilty, which, you're technically innocent till proven guilty. Well, if you're wealthy, you're innocent till proven guilty in this country. But I think that a big reason why his lawyer pointed that out today is, why does Eric Adams have access to evidence that the attorneys have not been given access to? I mean, Jen, you're an attorney. Why are they discussing evidence in an HBO documentary that his attorney has not? They haven't been handed it over. And I'm not a lawyer, but it does seem, this happened in December. There was a month delay that the prosecution and the defense agreed on. Why haven't they handed over everything? There's not a mountain of evidence that it would take 2 months to hand it over. So I think essentially what you're seeing with Adams, in this documentary and other documentaries, people don't feel terrorized by him. So they're using the public airwaves to basically make him into a monster. And that's also why, I don't know why they put a vest on him. It looked like a bulletproof vest.
Like Hannibal Lecter. They had him looking like, well, why was Eric Adams involved in a perp walk? Why was that a spectacle? All of this is ridiculous. It's almost like they're sort of trying to sabotage the case. It's like here's what I predict. And this is what I've been saying from the beginning. I don't think that this is going to see a trial. Like, I don't think this trial is going to see, there is no, I don't see that happening. Now, whether or not there's a deal, whether or not something bad happens, which I really hope doesn't, I do not think that they want this to go to trial. Not in the same way about Diddy. Oh, that's never going to trial. But this is one of those things that they'd prefer it not go to trial. So they're going to either prolong it as long as possible, sabotage it. They know that they're not going to be able to get an unbiased jury. And I wouldn't be surprised if somehow somebody's gunning for some sort of mistrial.
Well, I think that there's cascading interests. I think that the government, who, when I say the government, I mean, Adams, federal government, I don't think they want a long drawn out trial, because I think you're going to see crowds grow in favor of him. And You know, there was only a couple dozen out on Friday. It was very, very cold. It was midday as well. But you had a couple dozen supporters out there. And I think that's going to grow once the actual trial starts. And the media doesn't cover the predatory for-profit health insurance industry. But if you have hundreds of people out there supporting him, and I would think that's not only in New York, I think you'd have, support rallies elsewhere. They can't ignore that. And they can't call them all bizarre, twisted cult members. As I covered earlier, Jake Tapper called his supporters twisted and bizarre, and CNN's legal contributor called it a cult.
Oh,
so,
look at the source, people.
I don't think the government officials want him out a trial, but I do think that the people who buy off the government officials, which would be the healthcare industry, I think they want a trial.
I don't think they want a trial.
Oh, I do.
You think they want? I don't think they want everybody talking about all their dirty laundry. The amount of stories of people that they don't want that simulated. That's one of the reasons I don't think they want this to go to trial.
I don't think they want them talking about it, but I also think they want an example set so nobody. Yeah.
Which is why I'm concerned for his safety.
Yeah, I think you could have an Epstein situation here. And I also think they want the death penalty because they want, as much as they don't want their laundry and all these protests, that will be a moment in time and then it will be over and we'll go back to, business of screwing people in America. But I think they want an example of him being put to death, frankly, to kind of deter others.
It's the Hunger Games. It's the Hunger Games. They're making an example.
I got news for you. You're the lawyer, so correct me if I'm wrong. I do think Mangione's attorney is being smart by pointing out all the procedural issues, the fact that her client's being prejudiced, the fact that you have the mayor who's got his own problems and should not be mayor, revealing evidence that they haven't seen, because this is all setting up for an appeal. I think.
Wait, correct me if I'm wrong. She was a prosecutor or a public defender?
Public defender.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean,
she was a CNN contributor too.
Because either way, it's like there's this incredible knowledge that you get from either side in these cases. Like either way, no, she knows exactly what she's doing.
And she was also number 2 or 3 in the Southern District of New York, which is kind of like, other than the Department of Justice, that's like the creme de la creme state justice agency. So she knows how all of this works. So I think that between the pretrial publicity, between the procedural errors, shall we say, if some discovery has been withheld, and I also think, based on what we're seeing in Pennsylvania here, I don't know if you saw this, but his attorney in Pennsylvania, because he was arrested initially in Pennsylvania, put forth today a motion to dismiss the case in Pennsylvania. Thomas Dickey is the attorney. He says that Mangione was frisked and surrounded by officers who gave him no indication he was free to leave the McDonald's restaurant until after he was under unlawful detention for 17 minutes. So basically, the attorney is alleging that there was a 17-minute window. So that's separate from the New York case, but there's a lot of different things happening at once. But at the end of the day, I think the core thing going on right now is narrative setting.
Yeah.
Nobody really finds this guy to be a terrorist. That there's a lot of people who don't agree with what he did, but no, people aren't comparing him to Timothy McVeigh here or Osama bin Laden. And that's really the only way they're going to get him on terrorism, is to bias a jury before the trial starts. And I don't really think it's effective, because that's not what people think.
I just wanted David Hunter. So what is the likelihood of Luigi actually getting the death penalty? I think it's low, but who knows? That's the whole reason for the federal charge and the terrorism charge. New York does not have the death penalty, do they?
No.
Does New York? I didn't think so.
Nope.
So yeah, that's what I was thinking. So the only way he could get the death penalty, and by the way, federally, it's so uncommon. Like, it's so uncommon that happens. So it's a stretch. It's definitely a stretch. So anything having to do with the state case, he can't get the death penalty.
Well, it's like you said, they're trying to make an example of him. They want people to not only see that if you even attempt to come after our for-profit health system, that this is what you have coming for you. But I'm kind of the mind at this point that we really have reached the point of no return. I don't think there is going to be a point where we can put this back in the bag again. I think single-payer healthcare is inevitable. It's just a question of when we get it, because when I'm talking to successful conservative entrepreneurs and they think that single-payer healthcare is the solution, it's just a question of when. You can only bribe and buy off people for so long. And if, God forbid, anything happens to Luigi, it's going to be like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in the streets. Like, that's what's going to happen. If he gets X'd, that might set off the revolution as far as I'm concerned.
Well, his attorney also pointed out, Jen, maybe you would know better than I, she doesn't. It seems strange that he's being held in federal detention in a New York state jail, but under federal detainment when there hasn't been a federal indictment. There's been a complaint, there's been charges, but a grand jury has not brought back a federal indictment. So it's all kind of theater and smoke and mirrors, because when she goes to see him in jail, he's not shackled. He gets to move freely.
Of course, they're not scared of him. Right.
But, when bringing him into the court, like you said, it's like Hannibal Lecter. And obviously, in federal, being detained federally, it's much harder for her to visit him, see him before court, after court. So there's complaints about not having access to her client. But overall, I think that I just think the way they've gone about this is piss poor, because I think they've already biased. They've already influenced the jury. What they, meaning the prosecution, the government, but not the way they wanted it. I watched some of the HBO documentary, and maybe I'm biased. It just seemed over the top to me, and they left out a lot of his reasoning. They kind of just skimmed over, his stated reasoning. But the other thing with trying to pin him on terrorism, because again, Mangione's attorney, she said that the prosecutors haven't even handed over the so-called manifesto, which they haven't confirmed is his. But if that is submitted as evidence, I think that's evidence against terrorism, because he says, I chose to just do this guy because I didn't want to hurt any innocents. I don't know many terrorists that put in writing, I want to limit the amount of people I kill. The point of terrorism is to hurt, instill fear, and kill as many people as you can. So if that's submitted into evidence, the alleged manifesto, it hasn't been confirmed that it's him by his attorneys. I think that's actually counter to terrorism. And some lawyers have gone on TV and said it's over the top. And going over the top of the terrorism charge might hurt them on the lesser charges too.
That's why I don't think they want this to see a courtroom, because everything that he has put out is completely contrary to their terrorist narrative. And of course, those things are going to be evidence, right? So they can't avoid those. They're not going to be able to keep those things out of evidence. So how could they possibly paint him that way? I still don't think they're going to find an unbiased jury. I think they could paint him I think he could paint him as Hannibal Lecter, and I still think that they're not going to find him guilty. But that's just me.
We have like 125 people in the chat, and guys, if you haven't hit the like button already, please make sure that you do. The reason I highlight Mr. Lopez, we are going to put you on blast. The reason why I'm highlighting your comment is because you're the one person in the chat who thinks that there is no justification behind what has actually happened. Everybody else.
Why do you read his statement like that? I actually thought his statement meant, no, his reasoning was that Brian Thompson was murderer.
No. That there's reasoning behind what I could be wrong, but what I'm saying is that
clarify, Lopez. I think he meant that he was laughing because obviously his reason is that Thompson is a friggin' murderer.
Look, when I caught your live stream for a few minutes earlier tonight, I happened to catch it when you pulled up the comment from that lady who was like, well, Elon is just trying to do this, that, and the other thing. And you're like, you cannot be this naive. But there are. The good news is that this is not like it was a few years ago. I think there's a lot less people that are completely in denial about the oligarchic system that we're living in today with elements of authoritarianism and yes, fascism, you can't just completely ignore it anymore. It's too in your face. And even the ones that want to pretend that that's not the case, then you have your interviews, or I believe these are interviews covered from Status Coup the other day. And this is what people had to say pertaining to what's going on with Luigi.
Frame it as a bunch of like groupie girls for Luigi.
Fangirls, which I think is ridiculous. I know people who are in the courthouse today, and it's everyone. It's truly everyone.
Almost every single media person who's talked to me today has asked me, do I feel some sort of like moral, compromise from coming out to a murder trial? And to that I say, I'm not here for Luigi. I am taking it, the media is here, so I'm going to be here to talk to them about healthcare reform. And that appears to be what the initial murder was about. But you know what? They want us to protest peacefully. Then that's what I'm doing. You should actually report on that. Yeah, they've got blood on their own hands. So for them to be like coming out us and pointing their finger and saying like, oh, you support murder? I mean, look at your own news organizations. Like, look at who you get money from, okay? All these Congress people who are like, Congress people who are accusing us of being morally compromised. Your stocks are in healthcare companies. You are voting against your constituents every single day for your own pockets.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was the people online who were commenting on his obviously attractive appearance, but I mean, can we see him right now? Are we looking at him right now? There's photos of him on that shirt over there. I can pull those up on his phone. Why would I stand out in 22-degree weather if this wasn't something that I cared about? This is something that I feel very, very deeply passionate about, because this is something that has personally affected me, personally affected my loved ones. Basically, every single, you cannot talk to an American that has not had an experience or does not personally know someone that has not had a terrible experience with their health insurance industry. It's a running joke, and it shouldn't be.
I'm learning a little bit more about how the media is covering just large-scale events like this and the interests at hand. And I'm noticing a lot of media here today, thankfully not your channel, are going to the supporters and they're saying, do you support Luigi? And, oh, there's all these girls out here. Have you seen these headlines where they're like, there's a lot of women at these protests? And apparently we got another one of these headlines today, and there's actually people of all ages and genders here, just trying to fight for healthcare, and we're getting some kind of headlines that are just nonsensical.
I like her. I've seen her on your show before.
Yeah, she was at the first court hearing in December.
Yeah,
and,
she's cool.
I'll tell you, I've been around groupies in my day.
She's not a groupie.
Most groupies won't show up in 30 mile per hour wind gusts, which was what was going on Friday. It was with the wind chill. It was like 20 degrees out, and it was midday on a Friday. But taking you behind the scenes. So I actually saw CNN's reporter there, and I was eavesdropping on his questioning. He's a little short, pudgy guy, Donnie something. And I mean, I heard him ask two people the same question. What do you think? He's alleged to have murdered someone. Do you support this? I mean, that they go in with that agenda and that framing. They're not interested. I'm 99% sure he didn't ask, do you have a personal, story dealing with the health insurance company? Your loved ones? What do you think of the state of the health insurance industry? What do you think of the reports that Trump is going to cut Medicaid? Do you think the Democrats are doing enough? None of that. There was one agenda and one framing, which is not surprising. It's CNN. But honestly, the jury. Unfortunately, most of them are not watching Status Coup. A lot. It depends on the age, but most of them are not, unless they get a jury of all 60 plus, which is the cable news CNN demographic. Most of them are getting their news about this from social media, this and that. But it was very appalling to me to see the framing, not just by CNN. I saw a couple others. It's simply, do you support what he allegedly did? And, from my perspective, there's dozens of people out there begging for health care. Some of them, are loud and proud. They're supporting Mangione, but a lot of them aren't out there wearing Luigi hats. They're just healthcare activists. But CNN and some of the other reports just kind of want to make it seem like a weird, twisted fan group, which I don't see that. I don't see that at all.
Okay, so here's my comment on this. I'm going to equate it to our campaign. We always had two campaigns going, right? There was the campaign to get money that was a national campaign. And then we had our campaign locally for votes. And at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is whether or not they can find 12 people to find him guilty. So all of that, putting that out there, that's great national stuff. But the majority of people that are seeing that are not in his jury pool. And so it really is only going to matter if they're going to be able to find 12 unbiased people. And like that girl was the other one, not the one the one before the last one was saying, you're not going to find somebody who doesn't have someone in their life or has not had a personal experience of hell with our health industry. That's what I think. So, I mean, I agree that the media is skewed, but I don't think it's going to save them.
And I told you I was right about Justin, but at the end of the day, what you have to remember is we have tried for years and years and years, including what should have been Bernie Sanders as the president of the United States in 2016. And I'm not saying he would have solved the problem, but I'm telling you, Bernie Sanders, especially in 2016, would have prioritized some form of a single payer Medicare for all expansion system within his first 100 days. That would have been one of his priorities as president. And so we have tried every single legal way to try to wake up this nation that we are the only developed country in the world, which is a fact, that does not have some form of a single payer system.
Universal healthcare system.
We're the only one. And so if you expect that people are just going to sit idly by, and it's 70,000 on paper, it's probably a substantially higher number than that of people that spit the bit every year and die as a result of not having proper health care. Or if that's not enough, going bankrupt as a result. So you're telling me that people are going to be surprised in any way that if we don't get single payer in the near future, that there's going to be another Mangione out there? Why do you think all these healthcare CEOs, as I'm sure you have reported, Jordan, many a times, they all have armored guard now? They're not able to go out in public because they understand that. And the only type of people that would need to do that is if they know what they're doing is wrong. If what they were doing was right, they would have no reason, because it's a vigilante, crazy person. They know what they're doing is effed up and completely devoid of any rationale because they make money off of people's suffering. That's how you make money in health, in pro health. And that's what's going on. So to suggest that, it's so terrible, this and that, trust me, you're lucky it's not happening every day, because we're at that point where I'm surprised it isn't.